Okay, welcome back to episode 2 of the Social Good Hour. My name is Chris Strub. I am your host for the next 60 minutes. Buckle up. I told you guys last week and some weeks that the Social Good Hour may not really last the full 60 minutes. Well, I tell you what, I promise you that today, the Social Good Hour is going to last the full 60. It's going to fly by. And this is going to be an incredible just experience for you. I've got a very, very special guest coming up in just a few minutes. I know a lot of you here are very patiently waiting to see her. I'm going to pull her up on the screen for just a second here. Wave hello just to prove that she's here. Hello, Hannah. She is coming real soon. That is our special guest today on day 1 of Black History Month. We'll get to Hannah in just a few minutes. But before we do, I want to introduce you. You are the special guest here on the Social Good Hour. Oh, wait, I forgot to play the other thing. We're going to play the other video first, and then we're going to introduce you. We're going to introduce me first. Ready?
Why, hello there, Petals. It's your Aunt Ethel here to welcome you to the Social Good Hour. Designed to uplift, inspire, and encourage by highlighting those change makers around the globe who are using social media to make the world a better place indeed. So, without any further ado, my friends, may I introduce to you your friend and mine, the host of the show, the amazing Chris Strub.
Well, thank you, Ethel. How great was that I spent all afternoon making that video and then forgot to play it at the start of the show. As I promised you guys over and over again, we're going to get better and better as each week goes by. Now, without further ado, as Ethel promised, I'm going to bring you guys onto the screen. This is powered by Restream. This is their beta chat feature where no matter which platform you are watching on today, your messages will show up on the screen. And that's a very, very important aspect of what we are trying to accomplish here with the Social Good Hour. We want you to feel like you are part of the show. As my buddy Dan Gingiss would say, there he is, we are starting to create a great experience for you here right off the bat. And as we move into the very first segment of the show, that is called Tell Me Something Good. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock. We put 5 minutes on the clock here. And for the next 5 minutes, I want you to absolutely flood the comments, no matter which platform you're watching on, flood the comments with something good that's happening in your neck of the woods. Hey, maybe it didn't snow that much where you are, or maybe you've got some other great news with your family, your business. Something good is going on, and we want to hear it. We want to see it. So here we go. It's time for Tell Me Something Good. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock. And you're going to tell us something good. Here we go. Chris says, I feel like a game of HQ trivia is about to begin. Yeah, we're going to get to trivia here in a minute too. So we've got a jam-packed plan here as we rock and roll into episode 2. My buddy Dan Gingiss, he revealed his book cover today. He said he's feeling social good. Chris Bryant says, woot, woot, indeed. Kicking it up a notch here with the puppet. Yes, that was Ethel. Ethel from All In Felt Puppets on Cameo.com. Yes, Chris Bryant says something good. It's beautiful outside with all this snow, and I've got nowhere to go. Absolutely love it. Well, Chris, you're in the right place. I can't wait to introduce you to Hannah Drake here in a few minutes too. That is definitely my something good for today. I can see her in the green room. She's waiting. She's so ready. She's smiling. She's laughing. She's listening. Hannah, you could jump in the comments. You could tell us something good too. If you want to jump in on Facebook there, I can put your comments up on the screen. JJ Morales says people are starting to get vaccinated in Central Texas. That is great. Much love to my friends in Central Texas. Love my pals out there in San Antonio, the Bexar County area. I look forward to being back in San Antonio, hopefully with my own vaccine in my arm. September 16th, September 23rd, excuse me, is the big give in San Antonio. Bluebirds are going crazy making their nests. Bluebirds are going crazy making their nests. That's right. Chris Bryant, not Cubs third baseman. Chris Bryant is in the house. That's right. Hannah says, yes, indeed. It is the first of Black History Month. A great, great day. It is a great day. It's an absolutely wonderful day. First day of February. It also coincides, Hannah, with the conclusion of dry January. So another really fun coincidence here for me, as we've got a little beverage or two waiting for the after show here. I see those numbers are climbing here. So if you're just joining in, we've got a heck of an audience here. This is Tell Me Something Good, where you have another 2 minutes and 30 seconds right now to jump in the comments and tell us something good going on in your neck of the woods. It could be something with your business, could be something with your family. It could be something you saw on social media, something you saw on the news. Maybe not something you saw on the news. There's a lot of bad news out there, but tell me something good. We're going to celebrate your good things going on in your life. And you've got another 2 minutes here. Yes, something good. Chris is right. We've got Hannah Drake. Hannah Drake is waiting in the wings. She is ready. We will have her on at about 4:15. We will get going with our chat with Hannah. I can't wait to introduce you to the wonderful Hannah Drake as we wrap up here. Tell me something good. Well, I'll tell you guys something good while I wait for more of your comments to come in. Re-signed a contract on Friday and looking forward to heading back to York, Pennsylvania for Give Local York coming up on May 7th. One of many awesome giving days. See, I'm rocking my Louisville gear today for Miss Hannah there. I've got my Give for Good hat and my Give for Good Louisville shirt on here. And of course, Give for Good Louisville coming up on Friday, September 17th. Keep those comments coming, guys. This is your moment. This is your opportunity to tell us something good. Next week, you're coming prepared. I'm gonna make you bring your homework next week to tell us something good. But if you're something good is that you're tuned in and watching the Social Good Hour with Chris Chubb here on a Monday afternoon, perfect. That works for us too. Chris says, thanks for the contract, man. Absolutely. Really appreciate the kind words. Again, no matter which platform you're watching on, you can have an experience like this with Restream, which allows you to stream live to more than 30 social media platforms at once. We are live right now on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. And if you want to check out Restream's Twitter account, you can go to restream.io. We've got 20 seconds left. Last chance for you to get in something good here in the comments before we move on to the monologue. 10 seconds, last chance for you. If you get it in after the buzzer, we'll still get it on the screen here. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Social Good Hour. Before we bring on our guest, here's Mark Mason. Took him a second, but he's here. Happy to hear my favorite new Kentucky-based company, App Harvest, went public today. Great company. Awesome, Mark. Love it. I want to open with my monologue here. We're going to put 5 minutes back on the clock. And I want to talk to you guys today about seeing color. Our guest that we're going to introduce here in a few moments, her name is Hannah Drake. Hannah really changed the way I think that I honestly view the world. And certainly changed the way that I view Black History Month. I think a lot of the conversation, unfortunately, around Black History Month is too focused on this idea of not wanting to contain our appreciation of Black history to a month. And I don't like it. I don't dig it. I think it's perfectly fine that we should take as much time as we possibly can to celebrate the wonderful things that have happened, that have been done by Black people throughout generations and over the years. Black History Month, of course, kicks off today. It's no coincidence that we've got Hannah here on February 1st. But I think it's okay. It's better than okay. It's necessary to see color. I want to acknowledge here in the monologue that I've been part of the problem. I think the social media industry as a whole is part of the problem. I don't think that we do enough in the social media marketing industry to uplift Black voices and Black individuals and the work of Black people in our country and around the world. My hope in having Hannah on and a number of other awesome Black guests throughout the course of this month and quite honestly into future months will be to continue to tell those stories. I recognize my role as a privileged creator here. I've got a wonderful platform here with Restream that allows me to do basically whatever I want, to tell whatever stories I want, to speak to whatever people I want. And throughout the course of my adventures, I've had many opportunities to connect with some really incredible Black people. And, when I started this show, when I first had the idea for the show back in November, December, and I was considering whether or not I wanted to even have guests on the show. You guys saw last week we didn't have a guest, and we may oscillate between that format or not. I knew that if I was going to have guests, that Hannah would need to be number one, because Hannah has really completely changed the way that I have approached the world. And I think you're going to see that in the course of our conversation here in a few minutes. Yes, Strub speaks. You guys can keep commenting here while I'm talking. It's fine. It's all right. I can do two things at once. We good. So before I wrap up this monologue, I want to challenge the other creators out there who look like me to bring on and to uplift and to engage with more Black voices in the course of your day-to-day work. Black History Month is a wonderful opportunity to do that and to celebrate that. But there's no reason why we should all just be interviewing other white men or white women. I think when you meet Hannah here in a moment, you'll see just one of many wonderful, powerful, strong, influential voices who are really changing the world. And it's really incredible to think about the depth of the pain and the struggle that people that look like me have put people who look like Hannah through over the years. Sort of babbling a little bit because it is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. And you're going to hear that from Hannah here in a few minutes. What I love about Hannah is that she's not afraid to make people uncomfortable. And that's what I'm going to challenge Hannah to do here in the next 45 minutes. That's the monologue, for better or for worse. I should probably start scripting these things so I don't just babble on. Like I promised you guys, 1 week to the next, we do better. Before we bring Hannah on, I'm going to continue to delay your gratification here. I do want to acknowledge our sponsor of the show, Restream. We've got a quick message from Restream that we need to play here before we bring Miss Hannah Drake on the screen. There you have it. That's right. If you want to get your free trial of Restream right now, this is where you can go. You go to restream.teamstrub.com. I want to again thank the folks at Restream for making the Social Good Hour possible. It's time to introduce our guest, Hannah L. Drake. I've got my notes here, Hannah. I'm going to read off my notes to make sure I get it all right. She's laughing at me. Hannah L. Drake, not only is she one of my best friends, but Hannah L. Drake is a blogger, activist, public speaker, poet, and author of 11 books, including this one that I've got here in my hand, Dear America, I'm Still Rooting for You. Hannah, I got to get you to sign this the next time I see you. She writes commentary on politics, feminism, and race. Hannah was selected by the Muhammad Ali Center to be a Daughter of Greatness, which features prominent women engaged in social philanthropy, activism, and pursuits of justice. Hannah was selected as one of the best in Louisville, Kentucky for her poem Spaces, which you're going to hear here in a second, and recently was honored as a Kentucky Colonel, the highest title of honor bestowed by the Kentucky governor, recognizing an individual's noteworthy accomplishments and outstanding service to community, state, and nation. Hannah's message is thought-provoking and at times challenging, but Hannah believes that it is in the uncomfortable spaces that change can take place. Quote, "My sole purpose in writing and speaking is not that I entertain you. I am trying to shake a nation."
You want to hear Spaces? Do we have time?
Let's close it out with Spaces.
Okay.
We've got time for Spaces.
Okay, quickly.
Give it up for Hannah.
It is difficult to stand in spaces that weren't designed for me, spaces that were not created for people that look like me, spaces that scream, "You do not belong here." Spaces that feel like sandpaper against my blackness, coarse and rough and painful and uneasy. Spaces that are void of signs, but still I can see them hanging in a not so distant memory. Signs that separated water fountains and restaurants, blatantly reminding people that these spaces were not made for them. And although the signs no longer remain, the architecture and atmosphere is constructed in such a way that I know and we know that these are not our spaces. We are simply standing in borrowed time to entertain the master's masses. It is difficult to stand in these spaces and be me, fully me. Code switching my vernacular to make you feel comfortable. Why must my life dress itself up in discomfort for you to feel at ease? Why must my hair look a certain way in these spaces? Why is my gender an issue in these spaces? Why does my skin feel so heavy in these spaces? You see, these are spaces I no longer want to reside in. I do not enjoy being in these spaces. I no longer want to subject myself to these spaces, but then I am reminded as I stand in these spaces and I see the faces of these two little black girls watching me perform in awe, because I am a woman with kinky hair like them and skin that looks like theirs and lips that look like theirs, standing in these spaces. Spaces that have been designed in ways that have spoken to them at an early age, reminding them, baby, some spaces just ain't for your kind. You see, that is why I'm in these spaces, being a shout in these spaces. It is for every black person that has ever entered a room and wondered, would anyone look like them in these spaces? It is for every woman that has stood at the head of a boardroom table wondering, would she be considered equal in these spaces? It is for every LGBTQ person that has wondered, could they safely be themselves in these spaces? It is for every Muslim woman that has wondered, could she wear her hijab in these spaces? You see, I remember those that stood in spaces not made for them, that marched on roads not paved for them, that sat down on seats in buses not earmarked for them, that sat down at counters and endured the humiliation of sitting in spaces so that one day I too could stand in these spaces. You see, that is why I'm in these spaces. It is for everyone that came before me, that sipped water at the colored only fountain, that marched into integrated schools and knew they would be just one of 9. It is for every Black performer that stood on stages so that one day little Black kids could know that they too could stand on these stages. It is for my mother that stood in the space of a cotton field picking cotton for 80 cents a day. It is for everyone that will come after me, for them to know that they have a right to be in these spaces, to have a seat at the table, in these spaces, to have a voice, in these spaces, to have influence, in these spaces. You see, that is why I stand in these spaces even when it makes me uncomfortable. And now some of you sit looking at me, and now you feel uncomfortable. But today you have heard me. You cannot unsee me. In this space, I belong. In this space, we are here, and we belong here in this space. Thank you. Woo! Thank you all so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hannah Drake.
Hello.
Hannah, I think all of our friends are watching. They're giving a standing ovation too. I watched that video like 10 times today.
Wow.
And that video is over 4 minutes long. It's the quickest 4 minutes, I think, on the internet. You just, the way that you capped, I got to get out of the way and let you talk. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Happy Black History Month. It's
Thank
so
you.
It's so great to see you again. And I'm really grateful to all of your friends that are watching as well. I'm watching the numbers climb.
Hey, friends, to all my Facebook friends, y'all better ask me good questions.
Yes. So I do want to remind everybody who's watching at home, including my dad, if you have questions for Hannah, please put them in the comments. I will prioritize them. But Hannah, I have a whole lot of things that I want to ask you. One of my favorite people, one of my best friends. Hey, this weekend, I saw on Instagram that you got vaccinated.
I did. It was a few weeks ago, and we're really trying to push so that Black people will get the vaccine. Of course, we know historically medical malpractice and injustice that has been committed against Black people in America. I mean, that's the reality. And it was historical and even current, as we see, like Serena Williams and her issue when she was having her daughter and having blood clots in her lungs, and they didn't want to believe her. So it's not just a thing of the past, it happens now. And we are trying to get Black people to certainly get vaccinated. So
that's
and
awesome.
Hopefully they will. It's needed. COVID certainly is impacting Black people, but I tell people all the time, and I get to speak actually at a few medical conferences, so COVID doesn't have a brain, right? It's not doing a thing and like, I'm going to intentionally go out and harm Black people, right? That's just not what's happening. But often Black people have so many pre-existing conditions because of racism, so you add a pandemic on top of that and a virus on top of that, it's going to be deadly.
Yeah. So happy to see that you both, of course, got the vaccine for yourself, but also are continuing to inspire other Black people to go do that. I know that's a major point of emphasis, and wanted us to start with that. Hey, Hannah, again, we're very well connected on social media, and Hannah is such a wonderful follow on Instagram and Twitter. Please make sure you check out her social media channels as well. It's really just some of the best stuff you're going to find on the internet, which is one of the many reasons why I wanted you to be here. You seemed very inspired. Was it 2 weeks ago when Amanda Gorman came on? She spoke at the inauguration, and now she's going to speak again this weekend before the Super Bowl. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to see Amanda Gorman, on that big stage? Yeah. And then you also shared a story about speaking about how there's an Amanda Gorman in every school district in America. Can you touch on that a little bit too?
So it was just phenomenal to see Amanda, and I read about this poet at the time. So I said, there's going to be a poet at the inauguration. Who is this poet? And so I started Googling, of course, found Amanda. And then to see her walk out, just, at such a young age, looked regal, beautiful, her hair up, beautiful, the beautiful yellow coat, the red band in her hair, and to stand on that stage in front of that mic at a time in America where just weeks ago, right? We have this insurrection and this attempt to overthrow the government. And we've seen what's been happening in this nation leading up to this day, right? And so to stand there and speak truth to power so eloquently, didn't sound, but I'm sure at some point, because all speakers and writers and poets go through this, didn't sound afraid, right? And so, but I'm sure on the inside, she's thinking, I have to stand up here and say this. And this may make people uncomfortable, and people may not like it, and people may challenge me because I'm young and what do I know? You know, but that we know that's not true. And to see her do this and just explode, not just in America, but in the world, where everybody was searching for her and Googling her, and she's trending. And I wanted people to know, and America does this often, and we see it all the time. And so they have done it with Amanda, and they've done it with Stacey Abrams. They'll do it with Kamala, and they'll do it with any Black person that kind of just emerges out of the crowd. But you have an Amanda in your school district, and you have a Stacey Abrams in your city that is really fighting for voter restoration, or talking about how Black people have been marginalized when it comes to voting. And you simply need to support those people. Like, they're right there. And there are people that certainly have special gifts, but I think there's so many people that have special gifts, and it takes people pouring back into them. And so there's some student right now that's writing poems the same way Amanda was in school, writing poems, and just needs support and to be mentored, or may need some financial support, or just may need someone to believe in them, to say, you can do that. And so I think that's what I want people, certainly by all means, support Amanda, but then look around you, because the people are there. They're there. Just find them and then support them.
I love the way you phrase that. And as I'm thinking back to when I was watching Amanda a few weeks ago on the dais, up, at the Capitol building, the courage that must have taken. I mean, I'm standing in my apartment sweating because I'm on a live stream video at home.
Right.
And she's up there speaking to the entire world.
To the world.
The courage that must take. And again, you know it better than most, having spoken in so many great places and opportunities. And we're going to talk about some of that in a little bit as well. But I mentioned the Super Bowl. This brings back some interesting, powerful memories for you, I'm sure, as well. Can you tell us about how one of your pieces of work sort of took off thanks to Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah, what's funny, Chris, is ironically, even before that, when I wrote Formation, which was Beyonce performing at the Super Bowl, and it was one of my first poems that ever went viral. And then I wrote All You Had to Do Is Play the Game Boy, which was about the protest, the Colin Kaepernick protest. And I was so infuriated that this narrative was being constructed around him, that he was protesting the military and protesting America. And what's so funny is this is how ingrained racism is in America, that when you protest it, people think you're speaking against America and not racism, right? That's just how ingrained it is. Like, oh, you're speaking up for against police brutality. Well, you're talking about America, which is not what he was doing. So I wrote this poem, All You Had to Do Is Play the Game. Well, I remember I text you like, oh, one day Colin's going to say and you'd be like, oh, Hannah, one day he will see it. But indeed, the day that he saw it was the 2019 Super Bowl. And so like the attention of the world was kind of focused on Colin Kaepernick. I don't even remember what teams were playing. Everybody was focused on Kaepernick because it was kind of just like the culmination or center, the climax of everything that he was going through. And on that day, he shared the poem, and Ava DuVernay shared it, and it went viral. And over 2 million people have watched that poem now.
Guys, if you, wherever you're watching this, and a lot of my friends are watching, a lot of your friends are watching, I will tell you, we played Spaces for you, in doing this prep, I wish I could have also played, all you have to do is play the Game Boy and Formation. So when this show is over, do yourself a favor, pour yourself a glass of whatever you like to drink, go dive into Hannah's Instagram page. You have a Facebook page as well that people can check out. Cause Hannah's one of those 5,000 Facebook friends, folks, where you gotta squeeze in to get there. I got one of my spaces. It's like getting the vaccine, but, really Hannah's work is so transformational. We do have a couple questions from the audience. I promised that I would ask those. So my buddy Dan up the road in Chicago says, how pumped are you that a spoken word artist, Brandon Leak, won America's Got Talent?
Totally pumped. So my friend, I typically don't watch a lot of TV except for the news. So my friend sent me a message, said there's this poet on America's Got Talent. I'm like, what do you mean there's a poet on America's Got Talent? So I went on YouTube to pull it up and watch, and was so impressed because he would speak about things and write things and then have to go out by memorization and say these in front of an audience. And I thought, how completely amazing, but it just puts poetry on this bigger spotlight. And I think poets can speak to so many things that are happening in the nation and put it in this package that pulls on the emotion of people, which makes people think. And most people won't make the connection to what's going on in the world unless it impacts them emotionally. And that's something that poets have the ability to do.
Let me pivot to this because I have to ask this question. And if we run out of time, I want to make sure I have asked this question. How has, as a spoken word artist, among the many hats that Hannah wears, how has live streaming video changed the way that you can approach connecting with an audience?
Oh my goodness, especially in the age of COVID, right? So now everything is live streamed or virtual. And when COVID first hit, I thought so many of my speaking engagements were canceled. And then immediately, people started going to live stream. So this week I'll be speaking at a health conference that will air around the world. So now I can speak to people not just locally, but I can literally speak to people around the world. I did a video with someone in Scandinavia, last week. And so you can touch so many more people. And that's always what I wanted, is just for the message to get out. That was important to me.
I want to go a half step deeper with that. Last summer was very much the height of the protests that continue to take place. And I can't tell you how many afternoons I spent getting those notifications on Facebook saying Hannah Drake is live and seeing you on the front lines in Louisville, which was very much the epicenter of the protests that were taking place around America. So how do you think live streaming really affected your ability to get your message out last summer, with Breonna Taylor and everything as well?
In addition to myself, and I would go downtown and I'd be live, but we actually have a group of people I have to introduce you to called the 502 live streamers. And everything that happened, they were live immediately. And it allowed the people to see what was happening and not just believe a narrative that was painted, but you could actually see and think, no, that's not what happened, because I watched that live and I can see it for myself. And so it was so important that they have officially been seen as, that's media. Media is now transforming, where it's not just, I'm a journalist and I have this credential, and that's important too. But people who are out there on the front lines are just as valid and just as important, because they are giving an unscripted narrative, a real narrative about what was happening. And so when people would lie and say, oh, the city of Louisville burned, and I'd say, oh, let me pull up the video. Well, let's go back to that live stream. Show me where that happened. And then they don't have anything to say after that, because we have the video footage. We have it. In fact, someone was live the night Breonna Taylor was murdered and was live with the police shooting. You could hear it. And she's speaking about this live, that this is how close it is, where we saw what happened with George Floyd. Had that young woman not been live, what would the story have been? And so I always say, whoever invented the camera, phone, to put it, who thought, let's put this in a phone, you deserve a humanitarian award. because often that's the difference between justice and injustice, is that, like the young woman who videotaped George Floyd, I'm going to take my phone, and she was 18 years old. I'm going to take my phone, videotape this. It's going to be seen around the world, and it shifted the way America and the world thought about race.
I told you, I told the audience here in the monologue that you, Hannah, changed the way that I see the world. And I met you back in the summer of 2016.
Yep.
Back when a lot of this live streaming stuff was new. But of
Yeah.
course, your work has way predated 2016. And I think just from my naive, privileged perspective, I think it's been really interesting to consider how, at least from my perspective, Hannah, I think that more people are seeing some of the horrible things that are happening out there now because of live streaming.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's happening more. And I think that's part of the paradox of the local news and the news using live streaming even is people think that all of a sudden the world has gotten so much worse, but in fact, we're seeing more of what's been happening for generations.
Yeah.
Is that
Technology
accurate?
just caught up, right? This is, I remember, and I'm older than you, but I remember Rodney King and somebody out with the videotape, and that was back with the camcorder and all these didn't have a phone. You could just grab, but with the camcorder, and America saw what happened with Rodney King, which that was so many years ago. And then when I met you, 2016 was just when Philando Castile was murdered live on Facebook, right? On Facebook. And then they shut down the live stream, but we watched him. I remember, it's burned into my mind. I remember his girlfriend going live. And he had on a white t-shirt and was shot, and you could watch the blood pool across his shirt. I saw it live. And that same week, I think it was the day after or the day before or something, but Alton Sterling killed, and you see him shot in the chest by the police selling CDs. So this is when I met you. All of this was happening, right? It was just starting, and you thought, did I just witness someone be murdered live on Facebook? But what if that footage didn't exist? Then what would America think? That we are just making all of this up, that this is untrue. In fact, it's always been true. The technology just finally caught up to what's happening in the world.
Guys, I told you I could talk to Hannah for 12 hours. I so appreciate, I do want to say thank you before we move off of this topic onto something else. Thank you for being out there on the front lines and for all the work that you have done and continue to do. Again, you're watching this and, Hannah's hanging out. Looks like you're at home. Is that where you are? Or?
Yes, I'm at home.
Hannah's at home, but Hannah's not usually at home.
No,
Hannah is all over town, maybe a little bit more at home lately, but Hannah is just putting in the work everywhere, all around town. Hannah, I'm going to introduce a new segment here because all the segments I did before went so fantastically well, called I See That IG. Now, you haven't seen this, although you know that it's coming from your Instagram.
Okay.
And I'm going to put up an image on the screen, and I want you to tell the story behind this image. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hannah, I see that IG. I went back a few years. You didn't know it was coming here.
I did not.
Can you tell the story of when you were hanging out with 50 Cent?
50 Cent was here he had just come out with his, I believe this is vodka. I think it was vodka or tequila or something or other. He had just come out with this. He was in the liquor store and he was signing bottles, and I went to meet 50 Cent. My sister was so mad at me that I went to meet. She was so jealous.
So there you go. 50 Cent and Hannah Drake. And that, again, that's just one of the many, many celebrities that Hannah has crossed paths with there were a lot of choices for Hannah's I See That IG. My buddy Chris Bryant says, Chris, you got spammed in the comments of your live show. I don't know what that comment was, but if you guys want to keep those comments coming, I will keep them coming up on the screen as long as you're not trying to sell me STD drugs or whatever that last comment was. That was a little weird. Hannah, of course, we didn't talk too much about where exactly you are other than being at home.
Yep.
But one big question I had for you was, again, we've got people watching from around the US and around the world. What do you want people who've never been to Louisville to know about the city of Louisville?
Oh, that's a challenging question, Chris. But I would like for people to know that Louisville is a city that is in progress. That there are good, solid people here in Louisville. But Louisville is at a point now that it is facing and dealing with its racism. And Louisville, well, Kentucky. And certainly Louisville. Louisville was one of the biggest exporters of enslaved people to the South, right? So this is where that phrase being sold down the river comes from. It's because of Louisville's proximity to the Ohio River. It was easy to transport enslaved people to the Deep South. And so Louisville it has this day of reckoning that it's dealing with Breonna Taylor, certainly with the project I'm working on, the Unknown Project. There is a podcast called The Reckoning, which speaks about racism and slavery in Louisville. And so I want people to know, this is my city and I love it. I love Louisville. And it's because I love Louisville that I will always challenge this city and challenge this state. If I didn't love Kentucky, then I would remain silent. But because I love Kentucky, I'm always going to challenge Kentucky to be the Kentucky that I know it can be.
Can you explain what the Unknown Project is for those who haven't heard of it?
So the Unknown Project is a project that we are doing with the City of Louisville, Roots 101 Museum, and Fraser Museum to create art and experiences that seek to highlight the unknown names of people that were enslaved in Louisville. And many of the names we don't know. And there will be a bench area with poetry and footprints that actually sit at the Ohio River. And if enslaved people were able to cross the Ohio River, they entered Indiana, which was a free state. Technically, I call it free-ish because slave catchers here would go and bring enslaved black people back to Kentucky. But that's just the reality of Kentucky. And it's just something Kentucky needs to face. You don't fix it by pretending. You fix it by owning it. And so that's what it is.
You talk about your pride in Kentucky and in Louisville specifically. Of course, there's a massive intersectionality between the cultural work that you're doing with the Ideas X Lab, which I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the Ideas X Lab as well. But massive intersectionality between that world and the political world. Yeah. So can you talk about, do you think that change comes from politics? I know you were, of course, backing Charles Booker back last summer. Talk about the impact and maybe the extent of the impact that politicians can make. Because I think a lot of people out there think, okay, if we vote them out, then things change. So can you talk about how that isn't necessarily the case as well?
Well, I think what a lot of people need to understand, and we've seen this happen with the last 4 years, and many people think, okay, well, we'll get this one person out and then everything will be like great in the world, when in fact we know that's not true, because racism didn't start with one person. It is literally baked into every system. And I think when people understand that it's baked into education and healthcare and home ownership, every single system that is in this world, there's racism somewhere in it. And so even in politics, and so you see, we'll just rewrite the policy and make it and disenfranchise Black people even more, you know. And so we see this happen all the time. My friend told me, you know, they no longer lynch you with the rope, they lynch you with the pen. This is what they do. They lynch you with policy, right? And so, and then people say, oh, well, it's legal. It's on the books. This is legal. And so you have to change that narrative. You have to look at the entire system. And people think this is so huge that they can't look at it, but literally that's what it's going to take. If we are going to do something to fundamentally change this world, you need to look at every single system within this nation, because even policies that we have now are racist policies. It doesn't matter who the president is if the policy is still racist. It really doesn't matter.
Hannah, you wrote a blog today, and Hannah's writing always just blows me away. You knew I had to ask you about this. It's the first day of Black History Month. And Hannah's blog today, do you want to just tell everybody what the title of it was?
It's time we had a White History Month.
Time we had a White History Month. Now, I read this afternoon, and I was like, I got to ask her about this. What did you mean? And I encourage everyone, of course, to read it to get the full message. But what exactly did you mean by it's time for a White History Month?
Yeah, it was time to, I was listening to Baldwin, and Baldwin spoke about a White History Month. And I thought, wow, how interesting would that be for a blog? That white people understand their true history in America. And often it's written in a way that glorifies people that have murdered and looted and raped and pillaged, when that's not reality. And the reality is horrendous. Sometimes I read the reality and it disgusts me. I can hardly get through it. I have to get through it to know it. And so I think it would do white people well during Black History Month. And I challenge you to learn white history in America, real history, not the history that has been deliberately whitewashed and fed to you and taught to you in school and in textbooks that were written by people who were writing them to deceive you. You know, they were writing them to benefit the Confederacy. They were writing them to uphold racism. And so, you know, what is that? If, as long as the hunter tells the story, you know, we'll always glorify the hunter and not the lion, right? And so, and I want white people to really understand white history in America and understand it is a painful history. It is a heartbreaking history. And that's the part that a lot of people don't want to face. Like, that's real, but it's reality. And the way to get to the other side of it is simply go through it. That's the only way.
I think that pivots right into Chris. Chris is a super fan of the show here. Chris Bryant says, for Hannah, what would you recommend I do as a white man to help people of color in the best, strongest way possible? I need to consciously be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
I think I would, one thing, what I just said is certainly learn white history. I think when people understand their history, I think if white people would do this, it will fundamentally change the way that they think about race. Because when you read about the horror, you will understand why Black people are in situations they are in America. When you read about redlining, when you read about how Black people have been disenfranchised, Black people didn't do this to themselves. This was done to Black people. And a lot of people think, oh, you know, if you just pull yourself up by your bootstrap, and you really don't want to look at how years, centuries of things, policies and things have been done, horrific things to Black people. It will make you now understand. And then after you do that, so do that first for this month, do that. And then after you do that, the answer of how to and what can I do will come to you. But the very first thing you need to do is understand you and not make it about you, the individual, but you collectively as part of the white race. And a lot of people, the first thing they say is, well, not me, not all. And I didn't do that. And my family didn't. And I'm not speaking about you as a person, one person. I'm speaking about a collective entity and what was collectively done to Black people.
That reminds me, Hannah, I know we're running short on time here, but would you be willing to share that story, which you did share? It's in one of the opening chapters of Dear America. But you and I shared, I think, a pretty powerful moment when you got back from Senegal.
Yeah.
And would you mind sharing that story with the audience before we?
No, when I got back, so I didn't want to be back in America. I was in Senegal. I just met Chris right before I was about to leave. So I'm like, okay, here's this white guy, yeah, whatever. And then I'm gonna go.
Cute white guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Africa. I'll see you later. And so I went to Senegal, and it was like the first place that I could see me in the world, and I wasn't consumed with being Black. I was just able to be, and it was like the world. I could see it in color. So I come back, and I didn't want to be back because I know I was back to being the other person, so I was so depressed. And one of the first people I see when I get back is Chris, and he's so excited, like, "Hey, Hannah," you know. And I'm thinking, why is he talking to me? You know, but he's talking to me. And he wanted to ask me some questions about Smoketown, which is a historically African-American neighborhood in Louisville. And so I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And so I'm answering these questions. And out of the blue, Chris says, well, Hannah, what do you think? And this is long before Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or any of that. But out of the blue, Chris says to me, well, Hannah, what do you think about all of these police shootings? And I kind of look at Chris because I'm thinking, why would he ask me that, right? And I could remember I just started crying. And I said, I don't understand why it's so hard to just be Black in America. And Chris didn't say anything. And Chris didn't say, well, not all, and not my family, and I didn't do that. He just said, I know this doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. And then he didn't say anything else. He didn't try to justify anything else. He just sat there in silence, and I just cried. And it was a moment, a very teachable moment for me, and one that I used to teach others, is Chris didn't put himself in the center. He allowed me to be in the center and express myself and just listened. And often that's all you have to do is just listen, and don't take it as an attack on you, but just listen. And that was a very teachable moment for me, and certainly one that I've shared with many people when it comes to talking about race.
Hannah Drake, you're one of my best friends. I just adore you. I miss you. Once we all get that vaccine and everything, you're one of the very first people that I need to come see and sit down and continue this conversation off air, on air, whatever we need to do. I am so, so grateful for you agreeing to do this with silly old me. Day one of Black History Month. Thank you so, so much for taking the time today.
Indeed.
I'm going to let you go here, and then I'll text you after the show and remind you how much you mean to me as a human being.
Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful to you. And I'm sure I speak for the audience as well, who just seems to be loving this conversation as well. Thank you, Hannah. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh, I got to unlock the iPad. Come on. No, you can't see my password. This is America. Over the last 6 years, I've been very, very blessed and very privileged to have the opportunity to travel around the United States extensively, get a chance to meet with tons of incredible people like Hannah, spend time at nonprofits all around the US and really get to know firsthand so many of the incredible people that, to me, make America what it is, which is without question the greatest country in America, greatest country in the world, pardon. But America is far from perfect. And what I've learned, especially over the last 6 years, and very much so over the last 4 years and in 2020, is that the things that we're seeing happening around our country, the hatred, the racism, the prejudice, that's also America. And while I love this country, and I think that's very obvious based on my work and my travels, and hopefully the enthusiasm that I bring to each and everything that I do, I feel a deep-rooted responsibility to try and make it a better place every day. I think you've seen through some of the direction and the production issues that I've had all throughout this show, the sweaty armpits, the stuttering and the ums. I still don't have it all figured out. But damn it, I'm determined to try. I liked Chris's question for Hannah there at the end. And I would have added, as a white person, it's my responsibility to shoulder that burden of what people like me have done. And that is incredibly uncomfortable. But it's not nearly as uncomfortable as sleeping in your own bed and getting shot. Like what happened to Breonna Taylor. This is America. And damn it, my job is to try and leave this place better than I went when I came into it. A social good hour with Chris Strub is uplifting, inspiring, inspirational individuals from around the world using social media to make the world a better place. And Chris is looking for new guests for the rest of season 1. Visit the URL on the screen, guest.teamstrub.com, and fill out the form for yourself, for a coworker, for a colleague, or any individual you think would make a great guest for this season of the Social Good Hour with Chris Strub. Thanks everybody for watching. My name is Chris Strub. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Strub. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube at Chris Strub. Our guest next week is Jeremiah Dew. J. Dew, my boy here in Greenville, South Carolina. If you enjoyed hearing from Hannah, you're absolutely going to be overjoyed to meet J. Dew next week. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you next Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern.